talking a little bit about how we might work with our own death and also with helping those who are dying. And I've entitled it Being Real with Death, Being Real. Because for me, that seems to be the most incredibly important basic point of not approaching it with any pretense or with any solid preconceptions of any kind. So I called it Death is Real also because in my tradition, there's a lot of encouragement to make a contemplation of death an ongoing part of your practice of meditation. In fact, in traditional Buddhism, the contemplation of impermanence and death and change is considered essential and something that one should make a part of one's practice throughout life. So in some ways, you bring along an awareness of death as a constant companion. So we have a practice where we chant, death is real, comes without warning. This body will be a corpse. And that sounds maybe a little bit grim, but the idea really is to really not wander around in life and take things for granted. We always assume that what's going on is going to continue going on somehow, because that's what we would kind of like often. But this is a sense, well, whatever you're doing, you appreciate it. It only happens once, then it's gone. And your life, appreciate it, because it doesn't last forever. It doesn't stay the same forever. So the notion of thinking about death is just as the first topic I wanted to address is just encouraging people to bring it closer in a way, bring it closer, and have a chance over the years to examine our changing relationship to it and a deepening of our understanding of it from maybe something we think of often in the future that we may have different feelings about, interest or fear or questions of all kinds and speculations, endless speculations. But then there's a way of addressing it with less conceptuality and more based on observing our actual experience moment to moment. And when we look closer, it's like taking a magnifying glass and looking closer and closer, then we begin to see that it's not in the future. It happens all the time. It has happened all the time since we appeared in this human form. That things arise, and immediately they're gone. And something else arises, and immediately that's gone. And that's pretty much, when you look at it, what happens. That there's not kind of an edge there, and that's where we live, on that edge of things falling apart and things freshly arising. And that's a vibrant, powerful edge. And connecting with that is actually a really joyful thing in a certain way. And it's certainly a sharpening and deepening way to go about just mundane things throughout life, let alone what we might consider, more, profound or extraordinary moments of life. So when we look at death, we look at it in terms of the overall change in impermanence. And as I mentioned, it particularly experiences small and large, the moment to moment, falling away and arising, and also the many times in life when we have losses that are deaths, little deaths or larger deaths. And we can learn, if we're paying attention, we can learn about ourselves and what we might need to work on by how we react to change, how we react to little losses. Usually, many of us have particular things we get totally attached to, and we freak out if we lose them. I happen to like pens, and so I lose a pen, I suddenly slip out a little bit, and I think, wait, it's a pen, who cares? Yeah. Anyway, so that's the ground, having some sense of that, and some of an invitation, I guess, to not blur over moments that are actually filled with potential for deepening our insight and for human growth and growth of the heart, growth of our mind. So my second point I wanted to talk a little bit about is if you're thinking about the general topic of this series of being at the bedside, how can we can care for people who are dying? And I don't want to look at that in terms of what do we do then. I'd rather look at it at what do we do now to prepare, because I think it's not that suddenly we come to a crisis situation and let's go get ready to figure out how to deal with this. I think it makes sense to now, there's no other time really, now to work with the kind of practices that have proven to be helpful in relating to our own death and being better able to be with people. Not that we come in as some kind of savior figures or some kind of great wise ones, but as humans, being present and helpful in a different kind of way. So I'd like to talk briefly about 3 practices, and at the end of a discussion also have a short guided practice on these same lines. But for me, the most fundamental practice is simple mindfulness, the ability to tune in and to be present. So mindfulness, there are many ways of going about it in many schools and traditions, but mindfulness fundamentally is cultivating a quality of presence and stability and calmness of mind and simplicity. Often I think the biggest obstacle for a lot of times is how quickly we overcomplicate life and everything we encounter in it. And shamatha is a way of training ourselves and strengthening our ability to be still, to be present, to not be easily thrown by things that upset us or easily thrown by things that, excite us and draw us away. The notion of mindfulness is just very, very simple, coming into your body, which is also extremely helpful and important, settling the mind, and working with just the most immediate teaching on impermanence is our own breath that comes in and out in a natural way, but also is each breath cycle is a mini life cycle, you could say. We begin life with in-breath and we leave it with an out-breath. So feeling the qualities of it. I'm not talking about mechanical, just trying to, like some kind of slave labor, keep harping away, follow your breath, but in relaxing into the natural rhythm of the breath and noticing the qualities that it brings up in our emotions, thoughts, and physicality. The second preparation that I think is really, really helpful just for training for life and also training for dealing with any difficult circumstances, but certainly with loss or death, is what I call awareness, which is clarifying our mind. So first, you're kind of stabilizing the mind, and then on that basis, we can develop greater clarity. Partly, we have greater clarity when we're not distracted and preoccupied. And that quality of awareness is also sort of a natural outgrowth when we're still enough, when we're quiet enough, when we're present enough. Then we start to get curious and we see things in a fresh way. There's a sense of openness and relaxation outward. So the third I wanted to touch on, and I'm just really giving a very brief touching on these practices, just so you know that they're there and we can all work with them, that they don't belong to any particular tradition alone. The third is the quality of maitri or friendliness. Maitri is a Sanskrit word, just means loving kindness or friendliness. And that's the other strong preparation of how to kind of open the channels of friendliness a bit more, and a sense of kindness to ourselves and less judgment and friendliness to others. It's a quality of simple connection, which is so strong and true. So we're working with the mind, but we're working with the heart, working with the body. In particular, all of these are ways of connecting with what I mentioned at the beginning of the moment-to-moment awareness of impermanence in our own experience continuously. So these are all simple practices that you can take up that will make a difference when you're in the situation of pain or suffering or loss. The point is that we can prepare, and we don't have to wait till we're at a crisis point. The next theme I wanted to touch on, which might be helpful as well, is looking at how we tend to distance ourselves. This is being real with us, is about being present and actually sticking with a situation where we are dying or we're relating to someone who's dying or helping out. There's so many ways we're there, but not there. There are many ways that whatever fear or discomfort we have with the whole thing is expressed by checking out in a certain way, distancing ourselves. And so they're making a really strong boundary between the person who's there to help and the one who's being helped, the one who's there to visit and the one who's being on the deathbed. And in so many subtle ways, we make sure to view the difference, the boundary, it's a boundary that we can step out of and relate from a solid ground rather than enter into that uncertain and groundless space of transition from life. It's like we're trying to find a landing spot to hold our stuff together so we don't have to really let go into what's going on. Distancing strategies. And that's an ironic thing because it's kind of connected with something that comes up all the time in talking about these things is not only how to be present, but the other side of how to deal when you can't be present, when you're far away. And all of these things I'm talking about and touching on, maybe too many things, but that's what I have to say today. The fundamental notion is that you can do something no matter what. We often don't think we can, but you can do something no matter what. And in fact, sometimes someone far away may be more present for the dying person than the person who's right there. So much depends on your state of mind and your way to make a connection, through your practice and through your warmth and love and kindness. And we tend to be have a very limited view of what a connection is. And I think sometimes we don't really notice and value the power of connection from a distance. And so it can be so frustrating to not be able to be with someone that you want to be with. But I think the quality of connection isn't so literal time and space based. I think it transcends time, transcends space. So continuing with just some, I guess you'd call this being real, but being real is also being practical. So even though we're talking about contemplative practices and meditation and ways of working with your mind and heart that go back to ancient contemplative traditions. Where that really comes up in this topic, this discussion, is in seemingly really simple, ordinary, practical things that we can recognize. Part of taking a contemplative approach to being with dying people, part of that contemplation is increasing our knowledge of our own limits and our own preconceptions and our own obstacles that might get in the way. What would prevent us from really being there for someone, and not the sense of beating ourselves up, but I guess so much of learning and what's revealed in practices and whatnot is our own self deception, our own hang-ups, our own particular challenges, which would be different for everyone. When I was thinking about doing this little presentation, the first thing that came up in my mind is I was thinking, the most important thing is so simple. It's so simple that it's hard to know what to say about it. I said, being there simply, raw and real with another person, so simple. And so many times, I think we really want kind of a list of do this, do that, do that, do this, don't do that, do this more. And some of those can be very useful, but nothing I have found in my experience is as useful as being simply present, non-judging, kind and open, and dropping of our so many preconceptions we might have of what we're supposed to do or how we're supposed to be, and some kind of impetus that we've got to try to control the situation and make it go in a certain way so that we feel less discomfort. And those are kind of things, noticing that and how it works for one is so very helpful. Connected with this simplicity and presence is kind of what Suzuki Roshi referred to as beginner's mind, or readiness mind that's ready for anything. Mostly our mind's not ready for anything because we've already pre-programmed ourselves to be a certain way, to say a certain thing, to not notice certain things. So this kind of open, receptive. And so often we just want to do something. We want to do something and make it go away or make it better. There's so many things. Can't we just fix it? Talking about times when you can't. Of course, you can do little things like make person comfortable or whatever. But basically, the sense of sometimes the best thing is not to do something and to be in a situation. Can you be in a situation without trying to control it, but more trying to experience it, more trying to see it clearly, more trying to infuse the atmosphere with some kind of mindfulness, awareness, and warmth. Then, if you can do that, then the details of how to approach the things that come up are within a setting that is incredibly powerful and healing. So the other next thing I suppose you could say I wanted to touch on is going further a little bit with the recognizing the agendas we carry around with us, and recognize the way that we find ourselves distancing, and contrariwise, the ways we plunge into things unprepared and with the best of intentions just cause more chaos. one of the most prominent ones that is, I see in action and in myself as well is a tendency to enter in a situation. We're there to see someone, to be present, to help them, someone support someone in their transition, so to speak. And we go towards default of advice mind. Well, let's give that person some advice so that they go through this the way we want them to. We don't think of it that crudely, but that's basically it. And so many times people I've worked with, it's pretty much almost 100%. The most annoying thing is all the advice everyone lays on you when you're sick or when you're ailing or when you're facing death. And as a matter of fact, we do that to ourselves as well. We give ourselves all sorts of advice all the time. And it's completely distancing from, it's just kind of bypassing the actual experience into the myth that we can control things, that we should control things, or that we know better, we actually know what a person should do, which may be very different what they would want than what we want anyway. I was recently just talking just today to a friend whose sister is dying, and the family is kind of in dialogue about whether to tell that person that they're dying or not. They're supposedly only have a week or so to live. Some parts of the family wanted to say, okay, you're going to come home. You're all going to be better. And then, at least in the tradition I was trained in, it's not a kind thing to do to someone. Better to tell them that they know what's going on. But anyway, they're in this dispute, conflict. And the idea is that it's not good to lie to people, whether they're dying or not. It's better to be, not to blast people with bad information, but to be straightforward. So it's interesting in that in the Tibetan tradition and Buddhist tradition, generally the notion of time of death is both extremely, extremely ordinary. What could be more ordinary? It's like what are the things that everyone does? Everyone eats food. Everyone goes to the bathroom. Everyone dies. There's nothing unusual about that, and there's no personal attack involved at all. It comes with the packet. At the same time, in Tibetan Buddhism, it's also extraordinary. It's also a moment of great opportunity to realize something you might not have been able to realize earlier in your life. Something about that moment of dissolution from this life, no matter what you think happens after, something about there's a great opening of mind, opening and expansion of mind in a certain kind of quality of connection and clarity and wisdom possible simply by so much falling away, so much crap, you could say, the stuff that when we can't hold all that together, we can't hold our kind of life we've kind of imagined together as though that's a thing that we can hold together. When that's kind of like going away, no matter what, then something else, which is beyond so much of self-concerns and self-fears and self-obsessions and flaws and attachments and all that, they have less hold, and there's a possibility of a much vaster way of being. So it's both. It's ordinary, and it's not at all ordinary. So, preparing oneself, training your mind, familiarizing yourself with all your preconceptions, noticing when your mind is, when you're nervous and you cover up by fussing, being more active, doing this, doing that, talking too much. When you're just filling space, why are you doing that? That, among other things, is big space. And that's uneasy. So part of training, I talked about particular kinds of training, but part of training is, can we rest in a bigger space of a emotional, mental, and literal space? Space is what happens when we're not trying to make something happen. Space is what happens when we are not entranced by our concepts and our words. Those moments, whether shock or surprise, and things drop for a moment. And usually what we do is just scramble right back, because who wants that? But a sense of, can you walk into that space? And that is part of what this is all about, the sense of presence where, practicing where, being with someone where. And really, particularly at moments of transition, or how we be with ourselves in moments of loss and transition, where that really happens is in that vast space. So learning to rest in uncertainty, let go of control, and find greater stability than we might have found by struggling to make something happen, to be a certain way, to do certain this or that. There's so many things to say about this, and so many good resources to look into this topic. But I wanted just to talk on those very simple, basic things. That you can train yourself, you can familiarize yourself, you can gently see through the kind of barriers that you may put up. Whether you just avoid the whole thing, whether you try to control the whole thing, whether you come down as a savior of some sort, or whether you're there but kind of checked out, or whether it's just the pain sometimes, or the pain in the environment. It's just hard to stay with it. So even if you're trying to stay with it, probably check in and out and check in and out. That's okay. But recognizing that. And there's no one way, and no one has the answers how to be. So that's the thing. If you think you have the answers how to be, and you go into a situation, it's going to be different. So assume you won't know what's going on. And also assume that you can then pick up on it. Having that come to you rather than you entering and imposing something. It's more about listening than talking. It's more about stillness than action. It's more about spaciousness than control. If we slow down, we start fresh, we keep it simple, we can change the atmosphere for the dying person, for ourselves, and for those other people around, loved ones and friends, etc. We can offer something. I'm not saying that kind of going in, I'm a spiritual person, I'm just going to sit and meditate and I'm going to change everything. That's not what I mean. It's almost more like a stealth practitioner's approach. You train yourself, let go of that as well when you enter into the space of uncertainty, the space of transition, the space of so much potential and possibilities. So that's basically what I wanted to touch on. And I thought it would be good to include a short guided contemplation if you'd care to join for that. And this is calling it a three-stage presentation, three-stage meditation. That's what it's called, three-stage guided meditation. And I'll tell you what the three are, and then we'll go through them. The first is calling coming into presence. And that's something you can train in, and you can learn to do it on the spot, to flash, to touch in on the spot. The second stage, calling relaxing into clarity. And that is that kind of opening out quality. So settling and then opening out. And the third is a guided contemplation of impermanence, looking at different ways of aspects of impermanence. So in the next session, the next video, I'll be guiding you through that three-stage meditation of presence, clarity, and contemplating impermanence. See you there.